This is kind of a multifaceted, multi-layered question. So I'm going to read it through, I think in its entirety first, and then I'm going to go back and answer some of these different parts of the question. So when working through fears and blocks, should you focus on one thing at a time? How can you work through very interconnected things without getting overwhelmed? Also kind of in this realm, when you learn something new that you need to fix or could help, how to keep boundaries and momentum. Like, for example, there is so much this modern world has lost sight of in health. True that. So I'm constantly learning about more things. Me too. Today was that your microbiome is passed on with breastfeeding and can even affect your baby's teeth, which leads me to reading about how far our culture is from tooth health, with everything from dirt to jaw structure to breathing, etc. So of course I want to fix it and do better, but there's an overwhelm of things I see the impact of physically and emotionally that I want to change, but I don't know how I could possibly do them all. Yet they all feel important. How can you find balance and forgiveness in this journey, integration of things that doesn't feel anxiety-inducing, maybe? So, rewinding back up to the top, when working through fears and blocks, should you focus on one thing at a time? The truth is that everything's connected. Everything's connected. So you can zone in to one fear, one limiting belief, or a negative emotion that's from the past that you're still carrying with you, and you can focus on that one thing in order to clear it and remove it, recycle that energy. But at the foundation, the core, everything is related and interconnected. So when we think about this in terms of the subconscious mind, where all of those old memories are from the past, all of our resources, our internal resources, all of our conditioning and associations, where we have literally through our reticular activating system determined what is important versus what is not as important, what can be kind of more buried into the subconscious mind versus what is information that you need right now in this moment. And so that subconscious mind, when I draw it out, it's a circle, and within it are all these pluses and minuses, pluses and minuses, pluses and minuses. And those are representative of all the things I just mentioned, including positive and negative beliefs that we have programmed within us or wired within us through our neural pathways to associate this thing as I should feel a certain way, or that this thing is true about me, or that thing's not true about me. And within this very complex brain and mind, which are also thought of in slightly different ways, the brain versus the mind, and there's so much more to learn because we don't understand even like 10% of the brain is the statistic that I've heard from neuroscientists. And when we think about this as this very complex web, everything is interconnected and also compounded. So the fear or the block that you're thinking about, hey, I'm becoming more consciously aware of this, and I'd like to remove this or clear this out of the way because it's not been helping or serving me in my life. It helps to actually look at the full picture to some extent, because for example, one of the modalities I use is timeline therapy. And if we go back and I asked you the first memory of when you felt that anger in your body or confusion in your body, when was that first memory? And you tell me, I was 14 years old. I remember I got really angry because my dad wouldn't let me have a sleepover. I remember being so angry. Okay, but if that isn't truly the first memory of this anger that's been held in your body, this is where the whole picture comes in. We can go in and we can clear the anger from that memory when you're 14 years old using hypnosis, timeline therapy, NLP, subconscious reprogramming. And then you can feel X% better. Let's say you feel 30% better. And you're like, okay, yeah, I feel like I'm not holding on to so much anger. We hold anger in the liver most of the time. So you might see some improvements in your life. And I think that's still really beneficial work. However, if you are only 30% cleared or 30% feeling free and better, then it's worth going, okay, what is the whole picture? That 14-year-old memory maybe wasn't the first experience of this anger you're holding on in your body. Maybe it was as young as 2 years old, but it's just harder to access that memory. Or oftentimes it's not even from this lifetime, and it requires you to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lifetimes ago and also see, how is this anger something that is more like a karmic wound that has been carried on throughout lifetimes, and you're still carrying it, and there's not a conscious memory or tangible reason of why you're holding on to the anger. And then on top of that, there's intergenerational trauma, which means our generational wounds. So from our parents, it goes three lifetimes. So I'm thinking like your father's side and your mother's side back three generations from you. Excuse me. And so this is just one way of like, I think probably it's pretty obvious in this example how everything is so interconnected. So you could say, I don't want to be angry anymore. You could go to that 14-year-old memory, clear at 30%, but then maybe need to go back to that 2-year-old version of you as well as 2 lifetimes ago. And then also ask some questions about your generational lineage and more like what's wired in your DNA. Then we can really look at the full picture and clear the anger if that's what you were, trying to do. So again, back to the question, how can you work through very interconnected things without getting overwhelmed when working through fears and blocks? Should you focus on one thing at a time? So the truth is everything is interconnected and related. However, there's benefit in going in and narrowing in. I feel like I could come up with a really good metaphor for this. Like if you're baking something. So when you're baking a cake, you have to go and you have to get each ingredient to add, right? I open the refrigerator, I gotta get the eggs, I gotta get the milk, I gotta go to the cabinet to get the gluten-free flour, I gotta go over here to the other side of the kitchen for this oil. And I physically cannot just I don't have magical superpowers to just grab everything at once. Meaning if you're trying to make the changes, in this case, Chelsea was talking about the microbiome and breastfeeding and tooth health, jaw health, there's so much that goes into it. You cannot physically just grab all those different ingredients that play a part into your son's microbiome and his overall health, for example. You have to do one at a time. When you're baking the cake, I've got to go get this ingredient and then this ingredient, but they compound. And when you start to put all of them into the bowl, eventually you're going to have that full picture, and you're going to have all the different individual parts that are going to bake your cake, which is the metaphor in this case for healing the microbiome. You have to do one at a time, but that one at a time is different than I'm just going to focus on the eggs that go into the cake batter. Just the eggs. I'm going to spend years on the eggs and the eggs, and that's not going to get you ever a full picture. Versus I'm going to go over here, pull it back. I'm going to go over here, pull it back. And then I'm going to put it all together to create the most holistic healing approach in this case. And I'm going to stir it up and I'm going to make this freaking batter and it's going to be delicious, right? And in that case, again, to bring it back to the example that was shared in this question, is in order to not overwhelm yourself, you're doing one thing at a time while also abiding by and living in this truth that there's more than one component that is important. So I'm not going to expend all of my energy in one area for a really long time. I'm going to keep putting in all the different ingredients so I can have the most delicious cake possible. Okay. Yeah, how can you find balance and forgiveness in this journey? The balance and forgiveness is certainly a practice, almost a ritual, and something that we can source within an inner knowing. the soul knowing that you're doing the best that you can, and that we're all living this human experience, and that there's always going to be something in this human experience that we feel like we could have done better, or that is not perfectly balanced. I abide by balance is bullshit. I don't even strive for balance in my life anymore. And that might seem a little shocking to some of you who are like, that's what I've been working on, balance, balance, balance. I believe that there's never going to be a perfect balance. And so why would I try to force myself into this like even buckets of like, I don't know, 10 buckets of my life. These are different areas of my life. I have these 10 buckets in front of me, and they need to be evenly filled exactly to the same like line on the bucket. And it's just like, there's dogs running around, there's kids splashing them, and then the dog's drinking the water, and like your life's just never gonna be perfectly balanced out in all these little buckets, and 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, 10% here. That's just not the case. Like right now in this moment, like based on the concept of balance, I'm not balanced even in this moment. I'm working 100% with you guys and my business, so I'm not, I don't know, giving my husband attention or my dog attention or calling my mom, or like I'm just here with you. And so the balance can be over a longer period of time and not in this exact moment. But I just feel like the pressure of having all those buckets filled exactly the same amount, perfect balance in my life, is just this overachiever's like hell. It's the overachiever's hell to try to be that way all the time. So I don't even strive for that anymore, at least like especially in the short term. Maybe you could argue I do in the longer term, but there's a soul knowing that you're living a human experience. And I just got a phone call from Litchfield. Did you guys watch Orange is the New Black? It was not from a jail, but the Litchfield prison is on Orange is the New Black TV show, and I just got a call from there. So the forgiveness, though, is something, again, to go, okay, we were not like coming out of the womb and being like with a knowing of microbiomes. Like we were not even taught that in health class. This is actually a more recent discovery of how important the microbiome is. There's so much we're continuously learning as human beings, and can you give yourself the grace and the forgiveness to realize that you only know what you know, and there's a lot you don't know, and there's a lot you don't know you don't know. So the part that you don't know, you're like, oh, I should probably learn more about oral health, or I should learn more about this. But then there's a whole majority of the pie chart. This is another diagram I use very often. There's a whole other majority of this pie chart that is you don't know what you don't know. So if this is brand new information that you never knew you didn't know, and you just discovered and found doing a research rabbit hole, then like, how were you supposed to know? You didn't know what you didn't know. So now that you know, you can do better. Now that you know, you can do better. There's no reason to be angry or embarrassed or hard on yourself about what you didn't know in the past. Now that it's at the surface, you're empowered to do better. You deserve forgiveness, but you also don't even maybe necessarily need to forgive yourself for what you didn't know, okay? It's wordy, right? So you're just living a human experience, and we're all doing, our very best. And at times it's not going to feel like enough. I know, because I've been there. It's not going to feel like I'm doing enough. But the truth is, there's a soul knowing that you are enough, you have been enough, you will always be enough. One thing at a time. Bake your cake, but grab one ingredient at a time as you build that cake. All right, I think that's enough for this question. I'll be back in a second for another question, but Chelsea, thank you so much for this one, and hope you guys learned something.